and welcome back to the channel. This is the Darklight Emissary, and this video is going to cover briefly what I think is going to happen after the Horus Heresy series of books ends this month with The End and the Death, Volume 3. So, the end of the Horus Heresy is happening after 18 plus years, 20 years essentially, of these books. This series draws to a close this month, and that's just crazy for me because I've been reading them since they started, and it's just weird. It's really cool in a sense, and also a little bit sad for me just because it's been such a part of my life for so long, even though it's just a book series and just a sci-fi setting, something that I love, but it's still just kind of crazy for me to see this come to an end in a sense. But the books will always be there to reread, and the characters will live in those books forever, which is great. But basically, at the end of this series of books, at the end of the lore of the Horus Heresy, we are left with the dream of the Imperium in ruins, and the survivors are going to have to pick up the pieces. And the surviving Primarchs are going to lead that charge. They are going to organize and gather and have council, I imagine, I hope, in The End and the Death, Volume 3. I really hope we don't have to wait a book to get like a grand council of the surviving loyalists and have that big argument and debate over what to do next. I really hope we get that in the end of this book for the last, half of a third of the final quarter of the book or something like that. Not a ton of it, but I would like to see that. And they're going to come to a conclusion that, what's left of the Imperium is in ruins, and they do not have the vision of the Emperor to bring it back to the golden era of the Great Crusade. And so what's going to be left to the Primarchs and the legions that are loyalists? What's going to be left to them is rage, anger, vengeance, hatred, and the drive to obliterate their fallen and traitorous brothers. And that is where we get the name, the Scouring era. And this basically takes place for the next 7 years after the Horus Heresy. And the Horus Heresy itself took about 7 years as well. So, ironically, we've been reading stories and, having books and novels about a 7-year period of time for much longer than the actual conflict had taken place in the actual universe itself. So that means we will have a wealth of stories and information for the 7 years afterwards. But it's actually a smaller amount of time than I actually thought about or assumed it was, just thinking about it in my head. I mean, I think that's the official time scale, but of course, the next intervening, few centuries and even first a few millennia when there's still loyalist Primarchs around and legions up until the Codex Astartes is put into place. They're going to still be essentially hunting down traitors and chaos forces if they hear that they're around. It's not like they just, give up after 7 years and it's like, well, that's all she wrote. Let's pack it up and go home, boys. No. I mean, at this point, the Imperium is in that permanent, vengeance against chaos, fight, suffer not the heretic to live type of mode. And they're not going to break themselves out of that for essentially 10,000 plus years at that point. So I don't know exactly how much in the Scouring era we're going to see some of the stuff I want to see resolved. But regardless, we will get some of the things that I want to see resolved. And the first thing that I want to bring up is going to be known as the Iron Cage incident. The Iron Cage is an infamous part of the Scouring era where the Imperial Fists Legion is brought into a trap and confrontation against the Iron Warriors and Perturabo. And I imagine this is where Perturabo and the Iron Warriors went to get set up after they left the siege preemptively. And basically, due to the rivalry between these two legions and their Primarchs, this was like a trap to lure Rogal in. And they drop onto this world and assault this fortress. And when they get into the fortress itself, they realize that it is not in fact a fortress, but a giant cage, essentially. It's hollow in the middle. And then that's when the trap is sprung, and basically they are stuck in the center of this gigantic iron cage that Perturabo has built to trap them and cut this legion down. And were it not for the Ultramarines Legion and their Primarch showing up to break them out of this, the Imperial Fist Legion might have actually died here. And it's possible that Rogal Dorn by this time is a little bit suicidal, simply because he was probably taking it hard that he was not there to help the Emperor against Horus, and I think he's going to be the one to find his broken body first. At least that's how the old lore has it. So if Dorn is the one to find, this, his father, broken, and basically, the ultimate failure of what he was attempting to avert through, the long months of the siege and him, trying to protect, his father from this fate, it still happened. And I imagine that's going to change Dorn's personality a fair bit. And I think that the, Iron Cage incident is going to be kind of that catalyst for, him wanting to do or die, essentially, against Perturabo. But then that is kind of taken away from him through the actions of the Ultramarines Legion. And I think this is going to take place during the Scouring, because at least as far as the older entries are concerned for this lore, right after the Iron Cage incident is when the remaining Imperial Fist Legion is broken up into chapters. So if that's the case, then it would make sense for that to happen during the Scouring era, because that is also when the Codex Astartes was put into place as well, was during this era, and where we get the first founding of, the chapters instead of the full legions. But it seems like even the Ultramarines were still a legion at this point, so it seems like that was still getting put underway. We don't know what the length of time between that incident and the, splitting to chapters really is yet. So that's one thing I'd like to see in a Scouring era novel, is the Iron Cage incident. And then one of the other things I want to see is everyone's favorite Night Lord, Sevatar. What is his ultimate fate going to be? We know he didn't participate in the siege, and he is a prisoner of the Dark Angels still, aboard the Lion's capital ship, his Gloriana class ship, from the, ill-judged invasion assault by Conrad and the rest of the Night Lords. So we've got Sevatar still a prisoner there, and I do remember, I believe it's Aaron Dembski-Bowden, who said that Sevatar's fate is going to be decided during this era, during the Scouring era, or at least essentially after the Horus Heresy. And that might mean during this era. And I kind of hope so. I want to see some more Sevatar, because he is by far, the epitome of, what a Night Lord should be in a lot of ways, and just a really fun character. Has a kind of a odd sense of humor for both a Space Marine and even a Night Lord, I'd say. But anyway, that's one individual I'd like to see a bit about. And then I'm hoping we get a fair bit of Alpha Legion stuff. I want to see, what Omegon is doing with the rest of the Alpha Legion shortly after the Scourging, after the Scouring, because out of all the Traitor Legions, and I say that ambiguously with the Alpha Legion, they did not retreat into the Eye of Terror like the rest of the Traitors did. Well, with the exception of the Night Lords. So you have the Night Lords and Alpha Legion who did not go into the Eye, and the rest of the Traitor forces essentially either splintered or followed their Primarchs into the Eye of Terror to escape Imperial wrath. And the Alpha Legion did not do that. And I would also hazard a guess that the Alpha Legion did not put their full legion in the siege at all, considering we know they are essentially split up into three versions of loyalty based upon ingrained code words. You've got one force that is, essentially activated to fight for the Emperor and, try to help that side of things. One side is activated to support Horus and the Traitors, to try to bring about what the Cabal had set in motion with the Alpha Legion. And then you've got a third faction that's basically destroy everything. And so how populous each three of these branches of the Legion are, and whether they're activated or not at all, we don't know. But that I believe that the Alpha Legion is one of the biggest legions. And if that's the case and they did not enter the Eye, where did they go and what are they doing during the Scouring? Because I imagine they are one of the more slippery legions to even, keep your eyes on and then try to tackle. Yet they have 2 Gloriana class battleships and accompanying fleets, not just one Gloriana, and they essentially have a full legion of Space Marines, I'd imagine, still. In the Siege novels, it's mentioned, that Alpha Legion Marines are, in the assaults, but we are never given numbers, and there's no sign of Omegon. In fact, shortly before the siege even kicks off, Omegon seems to show up to Horus at the last rallying of the Traitor Legion's assault force for the siege, and he breaks a dagger in front of Horus, which seems to symbolize, a breaking of paths of, sympathies with Horus. Omegon doesn't say anything. He just breaks the dagger, and him and his entourage leave. They, make to teleport out, and Horus actually lets them go. So, for whatever reason, Horus respects that from them, and we really don't know what Omegon and the Alpha Legion's plans are at this point. While future warbands of Alpha Legionnaires are corrupted by chaos, that does not speak to the entire Legion, or, all of the Legion, and what, their sympathies for or against chaos are, nor do we know what the fate of Omegon is yet. Now, one incident we might get with the Alpha Legion is the supposed death of Alpharius again, with the Ultramarines assaulting a fortress that, has their Primarchs go fighting each other, and then, essentially Alpharius dying. But that incident is most famously known to have been put into a record by an Alpha Legion spy posing as an Inquisitor. So, and then essentially Rabout doesn't even recall that happening, and he does not forget things as kind of one of his traits as a Primarch. He just simply doesn't forget things like fighting a brother Primarch. So, if he doesn't remember it, chances are this was something that did not happen, and makes you wonder then what we're going to get from the Alpha Legion, if not that incident. But essentially, I am always interested in more Alpha Legion shenanigans. I know some people are tired of the Alpha Legion and their convoluted nonsense, but I always kind of like them. I just think that they're one of the more interesting, secretive parts of the Imperium that we still don't know their full motives or how much the Emperor knew what they were doing or not. Like, they seem to be this really weird, esoteric force for a Space Marine Legion to have existed. And they did not break up into chapters because they were not loyalists at the time, not seen as loyalists at least. And then, they still have or had a Primarch active at that time, at the very least. So, it'll be interesting to see with that Legion. Hopefully gets a bit more during the Scouring era. And then, beyond that, I don't really have much more I can think of that I want to see from the Scouring era specifically. Generally, I think we're going to get a lot of really cool, just battle novels of, legions deploying against traitor fortresses and just absolutely stomping in, Iron Warriors fortresses and, Emperor's Children warbands that are scouring worlds, and suddenly, the Raven Guard show up and just go on a tear, or the Iron Hands show up in conjunction with the Raven Guard, or, all three all three Broken Legions maybe working together from the drop site, just going completely ham on the traitors. I think we're going to get a lot of cool just battles out of this. Cool setups for battles. There's a lot of potential here, I think, for some really cool stuff. I think we're going to see possibly some of the assaults on like older Chaos worlds that were left over from the Horus Heresy. Like it's mentioned that places like Istvan 5 were destroyed by loyalist forces, and I think during the Horus Heresy itself, the Lion was busy destroying a lot of traitor homeworlds. So I wonder if we're going to see any traitor homeworlds destroyed during the Scouring that weren't destroyed during the Horus Heresy itself by the Lion, because I know he was busy doing that for a few traitor worlds. And checking on that, it seems like he only destroyed Chemos and Barbarous, which are the homeworlds of the Emperor's Children and the Death Guard. So he essentially destroyed 2 of the traitor homeworlds, which leaves us with plenty of worlds during the Scouring era to have the loyalists hunt down and possibly have showdowns over with some of the traitor legions. So we'll see, I guess, what happens with like Olympia, for example, the Iron Warriors homeworld. Even though it was essentially destroyed by Perturabo in a big way, it's still there. So I believe it's eventually destroyed completely, without anyone left. No bases, nothing, by the Loyalists eventually, along with many of the other traitor homeworlds that have not been touched yet. Oh, and one last thing I wanted to add before ending this recording. One other thing I want to see from this era is a lot more of Sigismund and the beginnings of the Black Templar chapter. We're going to see, I think, Sigismund and the Black Templars, we're going to be seeing them being led by Sigismund, and that's going to be an interesting, force of nature to watch, just, in whatever battles they take place in. I just wanted to bring them up as well as one thing I look forward to hopefully seeing. So far, what we've seen of Sigismund has been great, and I just want to see more of him. And so this has just been a brief overview of this stuff. I'm hoping for much more than what I've talked about here for the Scouring era. As always, I appreciate your views and your subscriptions and your time spent on these videos. I appreciate your feedback for the constructive feedback that I do get. I do my best to implement it, and I like talking with you in the comments, so I like to hear what you have to say. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are. I will see you in the next video, and keep a lookout for a live stream this week sometime. I haven't really stapled down a day. I might do a post for it, but I live streamed this past week some Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2 gameplay of the Necron campaign, and I do want to continue doing that, and it would be fun to just have a few of you show up and we can discuss Warhammer questions you might have, or things you just want to discuss if you're well versed in the lore, things you just want to talk about from the lore, because that's why this channel exists and why I have it here, to talk with each of you about this universe. And so, again, hope you have a great day or night wherever you are. Hope you're having a great new year, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for your time.